Welcome back. We are live from Ground Zero. The breaking news from just a few moments ago that Will Blitzer was reporting that we've confirmed that there is some sort of a tape, what supporters of Bin Laden would call a martyr's tape, that he had taped in advance to be released if and when he was killed. We're not sure whether it's an audio tape or a videotape. We'll try to get more details on that. Also just into CNN, a U.S. official telling CNN's Pam Benson that the U.S.'s code name for Osama Bin Laden was Geronimo. Let's get the latest from the Pentagon. Barbara Starr standing by at the Pentagon. This Osama Bin Laden had a code name, Geronimo. What do we know about that?
Well, you know, we're very little, Anderson. That's just coming to light as facts really continue to unfold every hour since this all emerged last night. I think what people are watching very carefully, Anderson, is to learn more about how the attack itself unfolded against that compound. What is so extraordinary really is the fact that everybody got out safely in terms of the U.S. troops. You know, you'll recall over the years, there was the failed mission in Iran to rescue the hostages. There was the failed mission in Somalia. The U.S. Special Forces really revamped how they did business. It's all about training and practice. Practice, practice. They practiced against a mock-up of this compound. This was never about getting into Pakistan. This was about getting out of Pakistan safely once you got your target. And that's what they achieved here. Very few details really coming to light, but this helicopter assault, by all accounts, really went off absolutely flawlessly because everybody did get out. You know, they found Osama bin Laden basically in an upstairs room in this compound. That's when the firefight broke out. And, you know, to put a fine point on it, that's when Geronimo met his fate. Anderson?
Barbara, obviously there are facts that we don't know at this point, but I want to just ask you a bunch of different questions, and if you don't know it, just say you don't know. Do we know how many U.S. forces were actually involved in the operation?
Well, you know, if you're going to, that's a really good point, because if you start counting the team and the backup, it was fairly extensive. We don't know exactly how many, but certainly not insignificant number of Navy SEALs on the ground, several helicopters flying overhead as support helicopters. And what we now know, of course, is that there were a number of other aircraft overhead at some distance, fixed-wing fighter jets, Predators, drones monitoring the situation, other helicopters to engage in search and rescue. Everybody was ready to move in with significant firepower and force if something had gone wrong. And that's what John Brennan was talking about when he watched that one helicopter go due to mechanical failure. Really, I think it's fair to say everybody took a deep breath because they didn't know what was coming next, and they had everything ready to move in and engage in a very significant military operation with significant force to, pardon me, to get the team out if they had to, Anderson.
Do we know how many people were killed inside the compound, and was anybody taken alive?
No, no one was taken alive. There were a number of women and children there that were basically taken to a safe area while the U.S. troops were there. And they were left behind. They were deemed to be non-combatants. We know Bin Laden is dead. We know a woman said to be his wife is dead, and a couple of other men that engaged in the firefight. That woman was said to be used as a human shield by Bin Laden, hiding behind a woman as the U.S. forces basically came through the door, and that firefight erupted, Anderson.
Do we know for a fact that he was using her as a shield, or that she was trying to protect him of her own accord? Do we know the details on that?
Well, I'll tell you that we don't, but we do know that U.S. officials have described her as being used as a human shield. So I think there was probably some indication in the sort of this final endgame. She really wasn't doing this of her own volition. It may have been a combination of both. One of the women there said to be Bin Laden's wife. So these are people that he was living with on this very secure compound.
And just two other very quick questions. Did they take any intelligence, any documents or anything that might be of value? And was the courier who was the endpoint to this, was that person killed as well?
I think the courier was. I think that's the assessment at this point. But you raised something very significant. They wanted to get in and out very fast, 40 minutes on the ground. But indeed, they gathered a significant amount of intelligence, basically computer material, other material in that compound, and the CIA now is establishing a task force to review all this intelligence material, see what they have, and see if they can find any of the other bin Laden associates, Ayman al-Zawahiri, Mullah Omar. Is there anything in all of that that tells them where these other al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders are hiding? That's something they want to move on very quickly if there are clues in everything that they gathered up.
All right, Barbara, thanks. We'll continue that reporting. Let's go to Wolf in Washington. Wolf.
Thanks very much, Anderson. I want to bring in retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Ed O'Connell. He's joining us from Los Angeles. He spent 20 years in the Air Force as an intelligence officer, was the chief of targeting for the U.S. Military Central Command during the war in Afghanistan, worked for then General Tommy Franks. This looks like a very, very risky but sophisticated operation. How much rehearsal goes into something like this?
Oh, extraordinary, Wolf. I think probably you're talking about months now. Unlike what we had in Tora Bora, where you had a quick reaction situation, this was more of a pre-planned situation where you had target intelligence packages that we call tips, for instance, showing people what door to turn, what door to go into, what wall to climb. So quite a bit of preparation.
Well, talk about Tora Bora. You were there at Tora Bora. That was the last time that U.S. intelligence suspected they were closing in on bin Laden. So many years later, almost 10 years later, now they finally get him. Why did Tora Bora fail and this particular mission succeed?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of differences. Good question. I think there we had very difficult terrain. Remember, we're at about 15,000 feet. So to move people from Task Force 11, who was a Delta Force on site there, to another location to sort of chase bin Laden and his Overwatch people was very difficult. This was quite different terrain. This is more of an urban setting, large compound. There you had a number of sort of rat lines, as we call them, very difficult to track. Also very difficult to pick up signals intelligence, which is all we really had to track bin Laden. And I think what happened is in Tora Bora, we got into a tangled web of good intentions, you might say. It was CENTCOM, CENTAF, General Franks folks. We had Task Force 11, who was Delta Force, who took over at some point. You also had CIA members in there. Everyone thought his death was imminent. I think we had a little bit of overconfidence at the time. And then, of course, he slipped away.
These U.S. military helicopters that brought the Special Operations Forces, the intelligence operatives from Afghanistan into Pakistan, I assume that's the way they came in because they flew out back to Afghanistan. Would they have U.S. military insignia? Would they be painted like U.S. military helicopters? Would they have something neutral? Or would they pretend to be Pakistani military helicopters based on your experience?
Yeah, I think they were probably blacked out. That's what we call it. You'd probably black out the insignia before you went in on the mission, and or you would have some deception going. But I think that we didn't want to get too tricky here. Let's stick with the playbook. This had been pre-rehearsed, so it was pretty clear cut in that case.
In this particular case, there were two helicopters that were going into the compound. One of them failed. They had to destroy that helicopter, but we're told there was a third helicopter that came in and assisted in getting the U.S. military personnel, the intelligence operatives, and bin Laden's body out of there. That was pretty smart to have a backup. They may have had more than just one backup helicopter.
Absolutely, Wolf. We learned a lot from Desert One, which was a failed Iranian hostage mission. Also, we learned a lot from Roberts Ridge, which was some problems we had early on in Operation Anaconda, which was after Tora Bora that next spring. So, yes, we always want to have helicopters in reserve, and not knowing the exact details right now, but I can tell you what, we probably had